Okay. Hello, everyone. So it's nice to see you all, a lot of people. And today I'm here to talk about microfrontends. And but first, I'm Federico Stefani. I'm a software engineer. I work for Into. I'm part of the Nova team. And before that, I worked in the last 10 years with a lot of companies and startups, mainly on web projects and also on AR, VR stuff. But today, yeah, I'm here for the microfrontends. So before that, you can see that there are really a lot of technologies that are popping up each year. And if I had a single strand of hair, of beard for each of one of them that I had to work on, I would look like this. And what's the problem for a company? That each client has different needs, and each team has different preferences on what technology to work on. And that's a big problem because when a front-end framework is discontinued, or if there is a new one that has a feature that a client needs, it's really difficult to move through all of them and to change it in a project, actually. Almost impossible sometimes. And there is another problem that during the year, a front-end tends to grow big. The library always expands. They add more functionality, and you end up with a lot of code useless most of the time that will slow down your application. And also the code of your application. It will become very big if you have a big project. And working on a file of a project with 20,000 lines, which we do, and it's really bad. And what you end up is, that's you, trying to hit your project with small tasks, like you need to change a logo, and you find out that you need to change it in 1,000 of places. And you have the client that, of course, doesn't know that. But maybe one day he find out when you tell him, oh, to do this functionality, it costs more than it did for the application. So yeah, that's not really nice. But yeah, there is something we can do about that. Microfrontends are not something new. They are actually existing for like 10 years, I think. And how many of you know what microservices are? Yeah, that's enough. And if you don't know, you can ask Marco Dell'Orto, my boss, later at lunch. But what are microfrontends? Let's try to look at the project as a composition of features. And let's try to give them to independent team. What happens is that each team has a mission and a focus on that feature, and also sorry. And if a team has all the skills it needs to build from the database to the front end, and it will become more fast and more efficient. Let's try to look at this example. So this is an e-commerce for tractors, and so you have the alternatives, you have the checkout flow, and you have also the related products. And as you can see, in the past, if you wanted to do an e-commerce like that, you start by dividing the features and creating a single application that do all of that. But let's try to look at it like this. So there is a team product that handles this page, and there is also a team for the checkout, which handles the buy button and also the basket and the purchase flow, and also a team Inspire that his focus is to show you the right product to buy, stuff like that. Let's look at the brief history. So the monolith. The monolith is the classic application that 90% of the market, I think, is based on. And there is, of course, a lot of problems because you have a single team handling everything, and a project that grows very big and is really difficult to work on. So what they did, they said, yeah, let's try to divide the front end from the back end. So there is a team that only has the of course, I forgot the word. So the front end handles all the UI, and the back end handles only the API for the front end. So they handle business logic and stuff like that, and the database, of course. And also later they said, let's try to divide also the backend team in single and mission-based teams. So what happens here is similar to what I showed you before. And in this case, you have different backends for each service that you have to need to do. And this is actually pretty useful because if right now you had to edit only the checkout flow, you only work with that. You don't go touch other systems because sometimes you touch one thing and breaks everything else. The microfrontends is pretty similar, but it's, as you can see, vertical through the front end to the database. And as you can see, Team Inspire, what's its mission? To help discover the customer products. The Team Search, to quickly find the right product, to present the product, and to provide a good checkout experience. And this, of course, it doesn't apply to every company, because some companies are pretty small, so you can't have 1,000 of Team for every project. But that's actually another talk. But if you're able to divide the documentation, the code, and everything, it will help you have more focus on what you have to do and how. So when are they useful? When you need to change a framework. So let's say that you already have Microfrontend in place, and we have 4 different teams, and one needs to change, or they want to try, or they need because there is a new update, or the previous frontend was outdated, and they can change it, and it will only impact that team, and the other will not even know about that. And you can also use it to upgrade gradually. So in this case, they all have the same technology, but it's still set up as a micro frontend, and it can be very useful to try. So maybe a team that is working on a small feature can try the new version, see if it makes sense to use it, and then help the other team, because it's really important to collaborate, of course. So what are the benefits? For the developers, there is less overhead and technical debt. What I mean is, and actually, it's a point later here. I will show you everything. So since you have a reduced scope, I mean, you don't have to know everything about the application. You have less overhead in the time that you need to do and to spend in learning where the stuff are, where you need to touch. And you will probably already know, because you built a small feature, and the teams are autonomous. So what that means is if they had a request from a customer, which is actually the next point, a customer focus, they are independent in solving it. And if, of course, there is a cross-team request, maybe only 2 teams have to speak, so the other 2 are free to work on something else. So yeah, that's a lot of efficiency here. So who works with this? I mean, nowadays also Netflix, Facebook, I mean everyone. And yeah, one of the first words, they actually don't know how to pronounce it in English, but yeah. Also Zalando, IKEA, Spotify. Spotify, you can try to think about the player, the list of the music, the playlist. They are all different products merged together. And what's important is the design system. I'm not actually a designer, so yeah, I keep looking at that, but it's easier to look at here. And one way of dealing with the design is a global style sheet. So in this case, you have only one single source of the styling that this is good because it's very easy to do, and it has a consistent look. I mean, every part of your application will look the same. But what happens is that, of course, the file, and even if you split it, but it's still a lot of lines of code. And let's say that you are the team that work with the buy button, and if you have to look through thousands of lines to find yours, it's not really efficient. And it's really hard also to find the code that you are not using anymore. And also, let's say that the design team wants to make a change, wants to move the position of the button, and now all of the team have to adapt if there is some breaking change, so something that is going to break the UI if you don't update the HTML. So one option to deal with this problem is, actually the only option, is to build a version package. So what that means is that each version of the style will get deployed as if it's a library that the frontend can use to build, to build a version, a package of their components, and it's really useful to be able to upgrade independently. So what that means is that, like, as you can see, the team of the related products is trying the new version of the design. And they can be independent, even if it will break everything for the product and the buy. In this case, they can do it freely. Yeah, of course, there is a downside of visual inconsistencies. So yeah, at company-wide, you can try to do these updates at the same time, but sometimes it's not possible. And there is also the need for common HTML templates. What that means is that if you have a single source of a style, all of the HTML have to be coded in the same way. And that maybe you don't need if you use a single file without versioning. And it requires a build process. What that means that the CSS must be built, as I said before, and put it in a package manager, and then use it later on by the single teams. Let's see some more tips. So, technology agnostic, really important, because each microfrontend needs to be completely independent. It needs to run on its own, if it's possible, of course. And that does not allow you to use every frontend for each part of your application. Let's try to manage the resources that we have in the browser, which are very limited, and not use like Vue, Angular, React altogether. But let's try to use one of them, maybe different version of one of them, and maybe some smaller for if you have a single component that you need to do. And also, let's try to look at the new small runtime that are available that are really good for big projects. And isolation is, of course, essential, because if you have a project with a lot of variables, a lot of data coming in, and another team is using your same name for this data that is coming, you're going to have some big problem, big conflicts. So you need to try to build apps, for example, with a tool called Storybook, which you can use to run your application independently. It's really nice because, let's say, for example, here, the related product from before, if you can run it on its own, maybe you just need the ID of the product to show what is similar. You don't need the whole application to run. And if you need to edit that, you only do that outside of the application. Because if it works outside, it will work also inside. Most of the time, not always. And team prefixes is very useful for browser events, cookies, and local storage, because that's something that is shared, and there is actually, maybe it does, but I don't think there is a way to divide it for a single microfrontend. But in this case, just say that you are the team product underscore. You are the team inspire underscore, and then you can use every name that you want, and you will be sure that there is no conflicts. Also, build a resilient site. So what that means is, let's say that a library that you are using in your front-end breaks because, I don't know, the library, there is a problem with the DNS that they're having, or whatever, or you have a bug on your JavaScript, or he hasn't loaded it yet, of course. Your application, your front-end needs to be able to work anyway. That does not mean that we have to give you your feature that you want, but it's simply that it doesn't break the other components or the application. Let's just say an empty box, so it's not that difficult. And of course, try to favor the native browser features. So what does mean? Try not to use like some complicated stuff to rebuild everything from scratch, because like most of the things that you need to create good components is actually already in the browser. Custom elements is one of them, and it's actually part of the web components. There will be a talk later today. And that is also for, I mean, the browser communication with events is used to talk between the components. So let's say that you build the product and you use the add to cart button. So when you press the button, it will launch an event, and the checkout flow front end can detect that event and do what it needs to do. And it's actually pretty simple to implement it, but also this will be a workshop, not a speech. So let's try to see some code, but don't be scared, just something really small. So let's try to take a look at this page from before. And one question to develop the microfrontend is, who owns the page? I mean, who create and create the composition between all the microfrontends? In this case, usually is the main feature. So in this main feature is to show the product, the detail of the product. So in this case, is the product team that use the fragments from the other teams. How can you do that? Let's try. This is a simple HTML element. As you can see, there is an opening and an ending, and the text in the middle. This just so that it will just show an empty button. So with this text that I added, doesn't matter what it says, but what it matters is that it creates a blue by button. And with this line, I will just say to the browser. If you use this blue dash by line, you will have your custom elements in your body. So what that happens here is that you can see, you can try it in your browser. If you try and edit and write your tag, it will automatically inject your code. And I didn't show it here because it will be too much, but for my web colleagues, actually, there is, with a couple of lines, you can add reactive variables to this HTML element. So you will probably ask, but if you can do that just with natives API from the browser, why do I have to use a framework? That's a good question. You don't most of the time, but you use 8 megabytes of React for a single component. But so, yeah. Composition actually is pretty easy because, like before, I have my components. I use the other two tags that I created before, and I put it in my HTML. And this is like a basic structure of the application from before. Of course, you need to add all the text, content, click, button, stuff like that. But it's just a way to do a really example for a working microfrontend. How is it built? Yeah, very briefly. Actually, let's say that each microfrontend team has a single source of code. And if you have a good DevOps team that will build some CI/CD pipelines, will build and publish somewhere. And when it's published, you are going to have your application that is going to call the single elements, and as before, use it. They will be used inside or another. And another way is to have a monorepo, but that's another talk. And in this way, you can have a fully working microfrontends demo. And moving from a project that is actually already really big into a smaller one, or on microfrontends is not that hard. I mean, mostly you already have to divide your application in components. There's nothing new. And taking the components out, building it like a web component is pretty easy, and you can do it right away. So that's not actually really difficult, and we should all do that, I think. Yep, that's it. Thank you.
Questions? A lot of questions. I do have questions as well. Probably you're not leaving the stage anytime soon. Do we have a mic? Cool.
I'm pretty hungry, so yeah.
It's coming right up.
Okay, thank you. So, my question is, how much do we need to split our frameworks, and do we need to allow nested microfrontends? And you can answer with, it depends.
It depends. No, yeah. Usually, as I said in one of the first slides, what matters is the features of your application. I mean, is your application an e-commerce, and you have the buy, the product, and the list? That should be your only three microfrontends. It doesn't have to be for the single components. So usually, maybe you gather the requirements from the clients, and you see how they can be grouped together. And that then it will depend on how big your application is, of course. But dividing the single components, the single functionality is another thing, in my opinion. You can have like every single component as a web component and as a library altogether, and then the microfrontend and use them. But it should be not something for the only for the developer. The microfrontend is also for all the project management, and because it works if you have different teams working on it, or maybe one team, but they have different environment where they can work on. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, there is no actually right way. It depends on your company, your team, and or your application.
May I? Maybe. Okay. What are your experiences with performances on with this pattern? And also, if you can say, how do you manage like coding share, like typings and stuff like that?
Yeah, actually, I mean, I really like JavaScript, even if it's really bad, but it's really good because you can work everything with libraries and create libraries like in 2 seconds. And for the typings, if you're using TypeScript, it's actually really easy to create a shared types and share it to all the components. Or do some smaller files for your single microfrontend and have shared ones. And if you realize that some of your types also are going to be used by another one, you can take them out and do a shared file. You can do it between those two. I mean, I think you can do it at the level that you want at that point. As performance, that actually depends on your project. Of course, if it's a small application, you could have Angular, React, and Vue working together. And with the, let's say, if it goes back a bit, no, it doesn't. Yeah, doesn't matter. And when you declare components, there is a connected and a disconnected callback. There, you can try to do some optimization, like if it's a component and inside has a full React environment, let's try to see if there is some way to remove that runtime and load it only, of course. Of course, this microfrontend works with lazy loading. So if when you open the application and go to the product page, if there is a button for a checkout, only then it will load the checkout flow and the checkout elements, not before. So yeah, that's something that's useful. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm the annoying one of the couple here, and it's really time to have lunch. So I'm sorry for that, but please thank Federico.
Thank you.